now is Chuck Rocha. He's a former advisor to the Bernie Sanders campaign. It's great to see you tonight, Chuck.
Good to be here.
The question for the Democratic Party is who speaks for it, really, at this point. And it looks like you found a spokesman, a smug, overpaid actor lecturing people in pompous terms, non-specific terms from a card at a play that cost $3,000 to attend. Way to make a play for the middle class, Chuck. I'm impressed.
Look, there's nothing like making your point on Broadway to get it across to everybody. Look, I think that they have every right to say anything that they want to say.
Well,
but
no one contests that.
Absolutely, and I know that you're not contesting that. But what I've been watching in the coverage is we know that these people were actually out debating, or not debating, they were out supporting Hillary Clinton, and there's 25 million people who think that this is wonderful, and there's 25 million people who think that this is absurd. It's probably not the best messaging point for us Democrats of where it actually happened. The shame is that the message actually even got lost, and we're having to talk about this. It might not have been the best timing or the best atmosphere for this.
Well, what exactly was the message? I mean, I guess that was the question I had. And I know that the New Yorker editorial page was all excited about it, and everyone in New York was thrilled. Finally, someone stood up to Mike Pence. But what exactly was the actor saying? I mean, if you could sort of boil down his message, what would it be?
Well, I was hoping that it would, and from what I read, and I don't want to read into it, is that we need to all come together. We need to make sure that there's a government representing all of us. What we've been saying, at least is what this Democrat's been saying after the election. There's been a lot of whining and a lot of kicking, saying, well, Donald Trump won. Well, guess what? He did win, and now we need to hold his politics accountable and move forward like we should as all Americans and not talk about a Broadway show.
Okay, but I wonder if lecturing people from the stage at Hamilton brings us together, or it just titillates people who are already convinced. It makes your friends in Brooklyn excited, but it doesn't really win people over, does it? And if it does, on what basis? What is the message?
Right.
I mean, what do they disagree with that Trump has said, and why won't they tell us?
You know, I love a good protest as much as anybody. I've been a part of a lot of good protests, and I would think that this would be an opportunity to have a megaphone to say about bringing the country together. And when they said represent all of America, Hamilton itself is about bringing Americans together and telling a historic story. So we should be talking about things like that other than a lecture, but talking about, you know, holding people accountable.
Well, it's about bringing 300 well-connected people who can pay the exorbitant ticket price together.
I hope that there's a boycott, because I do want to get a ticket.
Right, of course you do. Everybody does in your world. But let me just ask you this. Is this the message? Now, Gigi Hadid, who apparently is this famous model, had kind of a similar message, again, non-specific and sneering, but here's what it was last night at the American Music Awards. I know every NPR listener in America thought that was like high comedy, but is it okay to mock people's accents now, as long as they're, I guess, on the other side of the political divide from you, or what are the rules on that? Do you know?
Well, if there was a Republican making fun of a Latino accent, I think we'd be having a different conversation.
Well, there'd be a Justice Department investigation into it.
There we go.
Probably.
As a Latino myself, I think that, of course, I do think it's entertainment too, but I think that we got to judge both sides equally when we're having these kind of debates and when we're doing entertainment. I think Saturday Night Live has taught us that, going after both sides, but also bringing things to light where people laugh about it. I don't know what her political affiliation is or what their overall inst is, but you shouldn't make fun of somebody's accent, because people make fun of my accent all the time and they ain't funny.
But it's a certain kind of mocking. That's it. I'm totally for comedy, and political comedy is great. But you know the truth of this. You were a Bernie guy. Is that everybody with any power in America was aligned on one side of this contest, and it was Hillary Clinton's side. And they lost, and they're mad. A hurt dog barks. And what they're doing, rather than make an argument against Trump, is they're sneering at him. And I'm wondering if sneering is a way to assemble a viable political coalition. Does that work?
There's 46 million people who were registered to vote who didn't go vote. I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to figure out what's my formula to do it, and this may not be the best way to go out and figure out how to get Americans invested back into our process, because it drives me nuts that people are sitting out of the election, and I don't know if making fun of somebody's accent is the exact way to do that.
Yeah, rich people aren't impressed. That's the new slogan. All right, stay with us as we explore what's next. And tonight, we're asking what is next exactly for the Democratic Party. Now, after Hillary Clinton's shocking loss, the party entered the now familiar stages of grief. So this is exactly why second marriages typically fail. So you come off the tragedy of divorce, and you make a hasty, unwise decision. This is exactly what the Democratic Party is doing. They're bewildered. They lost. They didn't expect to lose. They lost to a guy they consider morally indefensible. He's a bigot. He's anti-Muslim. He's anti-African-American. So they find the first African-American Muslim they can, really the only one in the Congress, and they make him the head of the Democratic Party. Is that really a wise choice?
I like Keith, and if you heard Keith's message, it sounds like somebody who just got elected to Congress talking about fighting back against trade deals and standing up for the common man in the flyover states. I don't think this has nothing to do with him being Muslim or being black. I think that he's been right on the issue, because he's a Bernie Sanders guy. He was on the road with me. He's a good guy. He's elected by a whole bunch of people in Minnesota who knows he's a good guy, and he's very much a populist, and I think that's what we need right now.
Oh, come on, Chuck. I mean, look, I agree with you. I think half what you're saying is absolutely right. The Democratic Party probably will coalesce around an economic populist because that's what people want. I get it. But the only reason out of 193, I think, Democratic sitting members of Congress, Keith Ellison got the nod, not because he's got an august legislative record, is because he checks a bunch of boxes that people who like identity politics agree with. I mean, come on.
I would agree with you on this. Dealing with the race of politics within our own party, there's a lot of people like Latinos, African Americans, who felt underrepresented by the establishment Democratic structure, and I think that it's time that we change that. I think Bernie Sanders put a crack in that wall. I think we're going to end up knocking it down and putting some new people in there and having some fresh blood.
Okay, but if you run an entire campaign for a year and a half predicated on the idea that Trump is not acceptable because he's a racist, and then you pick a guy who is literally a Louis Farrakhan protege, black nationalist, separatist, advocate of violence, anti-Semitism, and you make that guy the head guy, I mean, the irony alarms are going off. Can you hear them?
Yep, but I think also people would have said a long time ago Donald Trump would have never got elected with some of his positions either. I think Keith Ellison is a good guy. I think that he will bring the message that we need there. Even if it's not Keith,
so
let's get somebody new in there.
Racism works? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that I'm not going to judge Keith on things that went on in his past. I will judge him on being a congressman, and the Keith Ellison I've seen on the campaign trail with me for the last 2 years, he's anti-trade just like me. He wants to see working middle-class people have a break just like me.
Chuck, can you find someone who's got good trade views who didn't once worship at the altar of Louis Farrakhan? I mean, sure, there's one out there, no?
Maybe one sitting in your chair. What do you know? Maybe somebody like Chuck Rocha should run. I got too many skeletons in my closet, but it needs to be a redneck Mexican who's a populist. That's what movement I'm making right now.
You got my vote. Chuck Rocha, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.